The crowd falls silent as Mason Tucker, CEO of Tucker Industries, stares in disbelief at the dozens of bikers filling his mansion's circular driveway. Leading them stands Jasmine, the 6-year-old girl who tried selling her bicycle to him last week. Beside her, Darius holds a folder containing evidence that will destroy everything. Before we dive into this incredible story of justice and redemption, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you believe everyone deserves fair treatment regardless of their skin color. Now let me take you back to where it all began when a desperate little girl approached a group of bikers with nothing left to lose. Jasmine Williams, a 6-year-old black girl, with braided hair adorned with colorful beads, stands nervously on the sidewalk outside Big Hog's Bar and Grill in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, clutching the handlebars of her beloved purple bicycle. Her clothes are clean but visibly worn, the fabric thin from countless washings, and the hems carefully mended multiple times. The summer heat beats down mercilessly temperature, climbing toward 95 degrees in this predominantly white town where racial tensions simmer just beneath a veneer of Southern hospitality. The air hangs heavy with humidity and unspoken prejudices as Jasmine gathers her courage, rehearsing the words her mother taught her to say. Her small shoulders carry a burden no child should bear: responsibility for her family's survival. A group of leather-clad bikers, all white men in their 30s and 40s, sit at outdoor tables beneath faded umbrellas, their motorcycles gleaming in the parking lot. Conversations and laughter flow freely among them until Jasmine approaches the largest man, Darius Johnson, a 42-year-old former Marine, with a full beard and tattoo-covered arms that tell stories of his military service and life experiences. The table falls quiet as she stops before him, her knuckles white from gripping the handlebars so tightly. "Buy my bike, sir," she says in a voice barely above a whisper, then adds with heartbreaking simplicity, "Mommy hasn't eaten in 2 days." The bikers exchange uncomfortable glances, their expressions shifting from surprise to concern. Some look away unsure how to respond, while others study the child with newfound attention. Darius sets down his drink and leans forward, his voice gentler than his imposing appearance would suggest. "Where are your parents, little one?" he asks, noticing how she flinches slightly at his movement despite maintaining her ground. Jasmine explains in halting sentences that her mother, Ayana Williams, 32, collapsed yesterday and can barely stand today. Her father died 2 years ago from untreated pneumonia after losing their health insurance. Their landlord evicted them last month after falling behind on rent, forcing them to live in their old car behind the abandoned textile mill on the edge of town. What little money they had went to food for Jasmine, leaving nothing for her mother. Her bicycle, a birthday gift from her father before he passed, is the last valuable thing they own. As she speaks, she reveals that her mother lost her job at Tucker Industries, the town's largest employer, after questioning unsafe working conditions in departments staffed primarily by minorities. When she mentioned filing a formal complaint, she was terminated the same day for performance issues that had never been documented before. Initially skeptical, Darius sends his friend Leo to verify her story, concerned this might be an elaborate scheme. While waiting, he buys Jasmine a meal, watching as she carefully wraps half of it to take to her mother instead of eating it all herself, despite her obvious hunger. When Leo returns 20 minutes later, his expression confirms the desperate situation. "It's worse than she said," he reports quietly. The mother looks dangerously malnourished. They're living in a 20-year-old Buick with broken windows. There's nothing in there but a few clothes and blankets. He adds that Ayana, once a department supervisor with a promising future at Tucker Industries, has been repeatedly rejected for assistance due to paperwork issues at the local aid office run by Tucker's brother-in-law. The bikers, members of the Steel Brothers MC, immediately decide to help. They pool their cash for groceries and basic necessities, with Darius assuring Jasmine her bicycle will stay with her. "That was from your daddy," he tells her, "and no one's taking it away." 2 members ride to the nearest supermarket, while others follow Jasmine to her family's car home. What they find shocks even these hardened men. Ayana lies unconscious on the back seat, her breathing shallow cheekbones protruding sharply from her gaunt face. Despite Jasmine's efforts to keep her mother comfortable, a makeshift pillow from folded clothes, a bottle of water positioned within reach. Ayana's condition is clearly life-threatening. Without hesitation, Darius lifts the emaciated woman and places her in Leo's truck. Hospital. Now he orders as Jasmine climbs in beside her mother, clutching her hand. At Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital, they're confronted with immediate prejudice. The emergency room nurse glances between the unconscious black woman and the intimidating bikers, making assumptions that delay care. "We need insurance information before treatment," she says, coldly. "And what exactly is your relationship to this woman?" The implication is clear. What would these white bikers be doing with an unconscious black woman, except something suspicious? Darius stands his ground, demanding immediate medical attention, while Leo calls Keith, another club member with medical connections. Only when Dr. Reeves, a black physician, intervenes after hearing the commotion does Ayana receive proper care. Severe dehydration and malnutrition, Dr. Reeves diagnoses, ordering immediate IV fluids and nutrients. Another day without treatment could have been fatal. While waiting for news of Ayana's condition, Jasmine tells Darius more about their situation, revealing details her childish understanding makes even more heartbreaking. After her mother filed safety complaints about chemical exposure in departments where minorities were disproportionately assigned, Mason Tucker, the CEO, personally handled the termination. He called security to escort her out of the building in front of her colleagues, took her company ID himself, and ensured she was blacklisted from other jobs in town. The local bank where Tucker serves as a major investor foreclosed on their modest home with suspicious speed, giving them just 48 hours to vacate, despite Ayana's attempts to negotiate a payment plan. This all happened after her mother refused Tucker's inappropriate advances during a company event, something Jasmine understood only as the bad man tried to hug Mommy when she didn't want him to. The section ends as Dr. Reeves returns with an update. Ayana will recover with proper care, but needs proper rest, nutrition, and reduced stress to regain her health. As Jasmine falls asleep in a hospital chair, still clutching her mother's hand, Darius watches over them, both, his expression hardening into resolve. "This wasn't just bad luck," he tells his fellow Steel brothers gathered in the hallway. "Someone deliberately destroyed this family. And from what the kid's saying, it sounds like it was because her mother is black and wouldn't play along with the boss's games." He looks around at the determined faces of his brothers. "I think it's time we learned more about Tucker Industries, don't you?" The next morning, Darius calls an emergency meeting of the Steel brothers at their clubhouse, a converted warehouse on the outskirts of town, with the club's logo emblazoned on the weathered brick exterior. Motorcycles of various makes and models line the parking area as 20 members gather in the main room, an open space with worn leather couches, pool tables, and walls covered with memorabilia documenting the club's 15-year history. The atmosphere is tense as Darius recounts Jasmine's story and Ayana's condition, his normally calm voice edged with controlled anger. Among the members present are Leo Garcia, a 38-year-old Hispanic mechanic whose skilled hands can fix anything with an engine; Vince Taylor, a 45-year-old black former attorney who left his corporate practice after witnessing too many injustices in the legal system; and Keith Reynolds, a 50-year-old white ex-cop who retired early after reporting police misconduct and finding himself ostracized by former colleagues. The diversity of the Steel brothers reflects their founding principle, brotherhood transcending racial and social barriers. "This isn't just about one family," Vince interjects after Darius finishes speaking. "I've heard similar stories about Tucker Industries. This fits a pattern." He explains that through his legal contacts, he's learned of several black and Hispanic employees who were fired after minor infractions or on completely fabricated charges when they questioned working conditions or sought promotions. Many left town afterward, unable to find other employment due to mysterious references issues. Suspicious and increasingly angry, Darius assigns club members to discreetly investigate different aspects of Tucker Industries' operations. "We need facts, not rumors," he emphasizes. "Document everything. Take pictures, record conversations if legal, collect paperwork. If Tucker is systematically discriminating against minorities, we need solid evidence." While some bikers ensure Ayana and Jasmine have food, medicine, and safe temporary housing at Keith's guest cabin, others begin gathering information from throughout the community. Keith uses his police contacts to review employment records, discovering a disturbing pattern of terminations disproportionately affecting minority employees. Vince speaks with former Tucker employees who initially hesitate to share their experiences, fearful of retaliation, but gradually open up when they realize they're not alone. Leo examines bank foreclosure documents through a friend at the county records office, finding that processing times for minority homeowners average just 7 days compared to 60 days for white homeowners, in similar financial circumstances. The deeper they dig, the worse the picture becomes. Tucker Industries systematically discriminates at every level, hazardous assignments given predominantly to minorities, while safer positions go to white employees. Unequal pay scales, hidden through clever job classification tricks that place minorities in lower-paying categories, despite identical responsibilities. Qualified minorities repeatedly passed over for promotions that go to less experienced white employees, and swift, severe retaliatory actions against anyone who complains. Most disturbing is how Tucker's influence extends throughout town, controlling the bank that manages most local mortgages, influencing the police department through generous equipment donations, owning the local newspaper which never reports discrimination claims, and maintaining close relationships with judges who dismiss lawsuits against the company with suspicious regularity. Following a lead from a former machine operator, the bikers visit Raymond Washington, a 67-year-old black former Tucker employee now confined to a wheelchair after an accident in the chemical processing section. Initially, wary Raymond warms to them when they explain their connection to Ayana. "That poor girl," he says, shaking his head. "Tucker did the same thing to me 10 years ago. Reported the chemical leaks 3 times. 4th time there was an equipment malfunction that left me like this." His weathered hands gestured toward his useless legs. No coincidence that all 6 workers in that section were black men. Raymond confirms their suspicions about Tucker's methods and reveals a hidden pattern they hadn't yet recognized. Tucker specifically targets single parents, especially minorities, knowing they have fewer resources to fight back and more to lose if they become unemployable. "He breaks families," Raymond says grimly. "Been doing it for years. Nobody stops him because he owns half the town and scares the other half." Before they leave, Raymond directs them to Marlene Cooper, Tucker's former executive assistant, who recently quit without explanation after 15 years with the company. Finding Marlene proves difficult. She's left town entirely, apparently fearing retaliation from her former employer. Through their extended biker network in neighboring states, they eventually locate her in Nashville, living under her maiden name. Darius and Vince make the 120-mile ride to meet her, finding a nervous woman who constantly checks over her shoulder during their coffee shop conversation. Initially, she refuses to discuss Tucker, but when they share the stories they've collected, including Ayana and Jasmine's situation, something breaks in her professional reserve. "I couldn't be part of it anymore," she admits, voice barely above a whisper. "Not after seeing what it did to real people." Marlene shares damning information. Tucker maintains a separate HR file system documenting his systematic discrimination, intentionally creating paper trails to justify terminations of minority employees while protecting the company from ploys. Lawsuits. These records include directives to supervisors about preventing minority advancement schedules, ensuring hazardous assignments go to specific demographic groups, and lists of employees targeted for termination due to attitude problems code. For those who question discriminatory practices. Most valuable, she has digital copies of key documents she secretly made before leaving, afraid to release them because nobody would believe me against Mason Tucker's power in this region. As Darius and Vince ride back to Oak Ridge with encrypted copies of Marlene's evidence, Darius receives a disturbing call from Keith. Someone vandalized Ayana's car home, spray painting racial slurs across the windows and doors. Jasmine's bike, temporarily stored there while she stayed at the hospital with her mother, was stolen. Its purple frame later found smashed in a ditch. Darius realizes they've attracted unwanted attention, and Tucker's allies are sending a message. The section ends with Vince grimly noting, "This just got personal. Tucker doesn't know who he's dealing with." The Steele brothers were founded to stand against exactly this kind of injustice. He's about to learn what happens when you mess with family, and that little girl and her mother are family now. 2 days later, the Steele brothers convert part of their clubhouse into temporary housing for Ayana and Jasmine, transforming a storage area into a comfortable apartment with donated furniture, new bedding, and a small kitchen. Despite improving health, thanks to proper nutrition and medication, Ayana remains despondent about their future prospects in Oak Ridge. When Darius mentions pursuing justice against Tucker Industries, she laughs bitterly, a sound devoid of humor. "You don't understand how this works," she explains, sitting at the small dining table while Jasmine draws pictures nearby. 3 different minority employees filed discrimination complaints against Tucker in the past 5 years. All 3 cases mysteriously fell apart. Evidence disappeared from legal offices. Computer files were corrupted. Witnesses suddenly changed testimonies or refused to speak. One plaintiff was arrested for drug possession the day before his hearing, even though everyone knew he'd never touched drugs in his life. She shakes her head, exhaustion evident in every movement. Tucker doesn't just have money and influence. He has people willing to break laws to protect him. Undeterred by these warnings, the bikers develop a more sophisticated approach. Vince, leveraging his legal background, identifies both civil rights violations and potential criminal offenses in Tucker's actions, creating a comprehensive strategy targeting multiple vulnerabilities. "We can't rely on just one angle of attack," he explains during a strategy session. "We need overwhelming evidence that can withstand tampering, intimidation, and legal maneuvering. And we need to document everything so thoroughly that even Tucker's connections can't make it all disappear." The Steele brothers divide into specialized teams, each focusing on different aspects of the investigation. Keith Reynolds leads surveillance operations, monitoring Tucker's movements and security measures at his sprawling colonial mansion on Oak Ridge's affluent north side. His team documents Tucker's daily routine security protocols and personal habits, discovering the CEO's weekly executive meetings at Oak Ridge Country Club are actually cover for inappropriate behavior with female staff members who appear uncomfortable but financially dependent on keeping their jobs. Leo Garcia and his technical experts carefully hack into Tucker Industries' computer systems, extracting the segregated HR records Marlene mentioned without leaving digital footprints that could alert Tucker's IT security. They discover an algorithm explicitly designed to flag minority employees for extra scrutiny and systematically reject their advancement applications regardless of qualifications. Hidden folders contain comparison photos of white and minority employees with identical performance metrics, but drastically different advancement trajectories within the company. Vince Taylor's research team compiles testimonies from former employees, creating a comprehensive timeline of abuse, spanning 15 years. Their investigation reveals Tucker inherited not just his company, but his prejudices from his father, who built Tucker Industries using exploitative practices during the civil rights era, specifically locating factories in areas with vulnerable minority populations desperate for employment. Historical records show the Tucker family actively fought against integration efforts in Oak Ridge during the 1960s, using economic pressure to maintain segregation even after it was legally prohibited. Darius personally visits the Regional Equal Employment Opportunity Commission office in Nashville, discovering previous complaints against Tucker Industries were suspiciously closed without thorough investigation. After persistent questioning, the reluctant regional director admits receiving pressure from higher up to dismiss cases involving Tucker Industries, citing regional economic stability concerns as justification for minimal scrutiny of the town's largest employer. Meanwhile, Jasmine struggles with nightmares about the vandalism of their car and destruction of her beloved bicycle, often waking in tears calling for her father. One afternoon, she freezes in terror while playing outside when a Tucker Industries security vehicle slowly drives by the clubhouse, the guard inside staring at her with unmistakable intimidation. Similar vehicles are spotted multiple times in the following days, making it clear they're under surveillance. Security measures are immediately implemented around the clubhouse, with members taking shifts, standing guard, and installing surveillance cameras at all approaches. Ayana begins actively helping the investigation regaining purpose, as she identifies key personnel still at Tucker who might corroborate her experience. Her former department colleague, Sandra Walters, a white woman who witnessed the discrimination but remained silent from fear of losing her job as a single mother of 3, agrees to meet secretly at a diner 20 miles outside. Oak Ridge. "I should have said something when they fired you," Sandra admits, shame evident in her downcast eyes. "We all knew it was wrong, but we were scared." She provides crucial information about current operations, confirming Tucker specifically instructed managers to make working conditions unbearable for minority employees, to force resignations, saving on unemployment costs, and avoiding double discrimination claims. He calls it natural attrition. But there's nothing natural about it. With careful preparation and legal guidance from Vince, Sandra agrees to wear a recording device during her next meeting with Tucker's HR director, capturing incriminating statements about their employee management strategy that explicitly references demographic targets for termination. The section ends with an ominous development. 3 Steele Brothers members lose their jobs at businesses connected to Tucker Industries through supply contracts or shared ownership. Local police begin aggressively ticketing club members for minor infractions like excessive exhaust noise or inadequate turn signal duration. Tucker is clearly using his influence to fight back, but doesn't yet realize the extent of evidence accumulating against him. Darius receives an anonymous, threatening letter mentioning Jasmine specifically. "Children should be careful crossing streets. Accidents happen." The implicit threat makes their mission even more urgent. What would you do if you witnessed discrimination, but speaking up might cost you everything? Comment number 1, if you would risk your job to stand up for what's right, or number 2, if self-preservation would force your complaint. Silence. This is the impossible choice many people face daily in situations like Oak Ridge. Like and subscribe if you believe everyone deserves equal treatment, regardless of their skin color or background. As the Steele brothers gathered their evidence against Tucker, they knew they were approaching a dangerous confrontation. The question wasn't if Tucker would retaliate, but how devastating his response would be. Would their preparation be enough to protect Ayana and Jasmine while exposing decades of systematic discrimination? Or would Tucker's power and influence once again allow him to crush those who challenged him? 3 weeks into their investigation, the Steele brothers have amassed substantial evidence against Tucker Industries and its CEO, Mason Tucker. Digital records, sworn testimonies, financial documents, surveillance footage, and employment data collectively paint a damning picture of systematic discrimination spanning decades. The club's main room has been transformed into an operations center, walls covered with timeline charts, connection diagrams, and photo evidence. Vince arranges a confidential meeting with Federal District Attorney Caroline Michaels, known for her integrity and strong civil rights record. The meeting takes place at a private home outside federal jurisdiction to avoid surveillance or interference. Presenting their findings, the bikers watch Michael's expression shift from professional interest to genuine shock as she reviews documentation of Tucker's discriminatory empire. Despite being visibly troubled by the evidence, Michaels explains the delicate political reality they face. Tucker's connections reach federal levels, she explains, setting down a particularly disturbing statistical analysis showing Black employees at Tucker Industries experience workplace injuries at 4 times the rate of white employees in identical positions. His family makes substantial campaign contributions across party lines. His brother-in-law works directly under the Attorney General. His college roommate sits on the Federal Judiciary Appointment Committee. She sighs heavily. "I'm not saying action isn't possible, but you need to understand what you're up against. This won't be a clean, quick legal process. Tucker will use every resource and connection to fight back, and he has significantly more resources than most discrimination targets." Frustrated but understanding the systemic challenges, the bikers decide on a 2-pronged approach: continue building a formal legal case while applying direct pressure to Tucker personally and publicly. "We can't wait years for the legal system to maybe deliver justice," Darius argues. Ayana and Jasmine need results now, and so do all the other families Tucker has destroyed. The Steele brothers organize a peaceful motorcycle protest outside Tucker Industries headquarters, coordinating with sympathetic employees to ensure maximum visibility. At precisely 12:30 on a Wednesday afternoon, 50 riders from various motorcycle clubs across the region begin circling the corporate complex, their engines creating an unmistakable presence during the lunch hour. Employees watch from windows and the company cafeteria as bikers distribute flyers detailing Tucker's discriminatory practices, complete with QR codes linking to redacted evidence and testimony. The company's security team appears unprepared for this type of protest, initially taking no action beyond recording license plates. After 45 minutes, however, Oak Ridge police arrive in force, dispersing riders for traffic violations and disturbing the peace. At the police station, where several Steele brothers are detained for questioning, Officer James Wilson, Keith's former partner, pulls him aside in a quiet moment. Mason Tucker called the chief personally, he warns in a hushed voice. He's paid 5 officers extra to find reasons to arrest Steele brothers members. They're watching your clubhouse, following members, just waiting for any excuse. Wilson glances nervously at the security camera before adding, "Be careful. Tucker's scared of what you've found, and scared men with power are dangerous." The local newspaper, the Oak Ridge Chronicle, publishes an editorial the following day portraying the bikers as troublemakers harassing a respected businessman and community leader with unfounded allegations. The article carefully avoids mentioning any specific discrimination claims, instead focusing on Tucker Industries' economic contributions to the region and implying the bikers are attempting to extort the company. That evening, Darius receives an unexpected call from a blocked number. Mr. Johnson, the smooth, cultured voice on the other end, says, "Mason Tucker here. I think we should discuss this situation like reasonable men." Tucker offers $50,000 to resolve Ayana Williams' situation and end their misguided campaign against his company. "I understand your motorcycle club has certain financial needs," Tucker says with practiced charm that doesn't quite hide his condescension. "This could be a mutually beneficial resolution." When Darius refuses the bribe, Tucker's tone immediately shifts from diplomatic to threatening. "I know about your dishonorable discharge, Johnson. Disobeying direct orders in Afghanistan, wasn't it? I wonder how your fellow bikers would feel learning their president isn't the military hero they believe him to be." The reference to Darius's painful past, his refusal to follow an unethical order that would have endangered civilians resulting in his military career ending, makes it clear Tucker has been investigating him personally. The next day, Jasmine returns from school in tears, her small body shaking with sobs as she runs into the clubhouse. Her teacher, Mrs. Blackwood, Tucker's niece by marriage, humiliated her in front of classmates, making her stand beside her desk while announcing her mother was a troublemaker, spreading lies about an important community member. Several white parents have submitted requests to Principal Matthews that their children be separated from Jasmine, claiming she's a disruptive influence despite her consistently excellent behavior and grades. Outraged Ayana immediately drives to Oak Ridge Elementary to confront school administrators. Principal Matthews, a longtime friend of the Tucker family, dismisses her concerns with patronizing smiles and vague assurances about looking into the matter. When Ayana mentions discrimination and potential legal action, his demeanor instantly changes. "Miss Williams," he says coldly, "given your current unstable housing situation, perhaps Jasmine's enrollment should be reconsidered. Child Services might be interested in whether you're providing an appropriate environment." The implied threat silences Ayana momentarily, knowing how easily the system could be manipulated to separate her from Jasmine. We've documented everything, she responds with forced calm. "Every incident, every threat. Your connection to Mason Tucker doesn't give you the right to bully a 6-year-old child." This escalation convinces the Steele brothers they need to directly confront Tucker in a way he can't easily dismiss or counterattack. Through their investigation, they identify his upcoming charity gala as the perfect opportunity. The exclusive annual event at the Oak Ridge Country Club will host the region's elite, including politicians, business leaders, and regional media representatives. Tucker is scheduled to receive a Community Leadership Award for his company's economic contributions, with a photographer from the Nashville Tribune covering the ceremony for its society pages. Using their diverse skills, the bikers implement a bold plan requiring precise timing and coordination. Leo hacks the event's technical systems, gaining control of the audiovisual equipment. Keith leverages his former police connections to access service entrances and security protocols. Vince creates convincing staff credentials, allowing several club members to pose as catering and technical support personnel. Darius, almost unrecognizable in an expensive suit borrowed from Vince's attorney days, his beard trimmed and tattoos-covered poses as a business associate from Atlanta, interested in regional investment opportunities. The section culminates as the plan unfolds. Darius smoothly navigates the gala's social dynamics, eventually approaching Tucker during a quiet moment between ceremonies. "Mr. Tucker," he says, with perfect professional courtesy, extending his hand. "Thomas Anderson, Anderson Investments. Your reputation precedes you." Tucker, accustomed to deferential treatment from business associates, engages in seemingly pleasant conversation about regional development opportunities. As Tucker relaxes, Darius calmly mentions knowing Ayana Williams. Tucker's practiced smile freezes on his face. Before he can respond, every screen in the ballroom simultaneously activates, displaying employment records showing systematic discrimination. The sound system broadcasts Tucker's earlier phone call, threatening Darius and offering a bribe. Stunned silence falls over the elegantly dressed crowd as Tucker lunges at Darius, screaming racial epithets that shock even his closest associates. Security personnel quickly restrain the CEO, whose composed public persona has completely collapsed into uncontrolled rage. As uniformed police officers arrive, Tucker demands Darius's immediate arrest for harassment and trespassing. Instead, they're joined by federal agents who have been quietly observing the event, alerted by DA Michaels, who attended specifically to witness Tucker's reaction. The public meltdown and documented evidence of discrimination provide the final confirmation she needed to formally open a federal investigation. The section ends with Tucker threatening everyone as he's escorted from his own gala, screaming he'll destroy anyone who challenges him, while shocked guests watch and news cameras originally present to cover his award record. "Everything. You have no idea who you're dealing with," he shouts at Darius, who remains perfectly calm. "I built this town. I own this town. You're nothing but garbage who'll regret the day you ever heard my name." The day after the gala, Oak Ridge erupts in conflict as news of Tucker's public meltdown spreads through traditional and social media. The Nashville Tribune runs a front-page story with the headline "CEO's Racial Tirade Shocks Charity Event," accompanied by photos of Tucker being escorted out by police while shouting at stunned attendees. Within hours, Tucker is released on bail, his legal team issuing carefully crafted statements characterizing the evidence as manipulated recordings and fabricated documents created by criminal elements targeting a community pillar for financial gain. Local television station Woke, whose owner regularly golfs with Tucker, runs segments questioning the bikers' motives and backgrounds while minimizing the discrimination evidence. The town rapidly divides along racial lines that had long existed beneath the surface of polite Southern interactions. Many white citizens, especially those economically dependent on Tucker Industries, defend Tucker despite the damning evidence focusing on his contributions to the local economy rather than his discriminatory practices. Minority communities, emboldened by the public exposure of what they've privately experienced for years, begin sharing their own stories of discrimination, creating an informal testimony collection at the local Black Church First Baptist, East Oak Ridge. Tucker retaliates aggressively against perceived enemies. Dozens of employees suspected of sympathizing with the bikers or discussing discrimination claims are immediately terminated for confidentiality violations. The Steele brothers receive an eviction notice from their clubhouse property, discovering the building was quietly purchased 2 weeks earlier by a shell company ultimately owned by Tucker Investments. Members face increased police harassment, with multiple riders arrested on minor or fabricated charges, requiring bail money. The club's resources are increasingly stretched to provide. Ayana discovers her hospital bill has mysteriously increased tenfold, with previous insurance authorizations suddenly lost in the system. Collection agencies begin calling hourly about this and other suddenly delinquent accounts created in her name. Most disturbingly, Jasmine becomes a deliberate target of intimidation. She's systematically isolated at school, with teachers ignoring increasingly vicious bullying by classmates taking cues from adult conversations they've overheard. One morning, she opens her assigned locker to find a small brown doll with her name written on it, hanging by a noose from the top shelf, a sight that leaves her hysterical with fear. When Ayana reports this hate crime to Principal Matthews, bringing Darius along as a witness, the administrator suggests Jasmine's disruptive presence is causing problems that could be resolved by removing her from the school. Environment. Perhaps homeschooling would be more appropriate for your daughter, he suggests with transparent insincerity. Some children simply don't adapt well to structured educational settings. His implication that Jasmine, not racism, is the problem makes Darius clench his fists so tightly his knuckles whiten, though he maintains his composure for Ayana's sake. Darius visits District Attorney Michaels for updates on the federal investigation, driving to Nashville rather than risk a potentially monitored phone conversation. She reveals troubling developments that demonstrate Tucker's far-reaching influence. Key witnesses have suddenly recanted testimonies after receiving threats targeting their families or bribes, offering financial security. Digital evidence is being challenged on technical grounds by experts hired specifically to create plausible deniability. Tucker's team has filed countersuits against everyone involved in the gala incident, including DA Michaels herself, forcing the government to allocate resources to defense rather than prosecution. His high-priced attorneys are exploiting every legal loophole to stall proceedings. Michaels explains frustration evident in her voice. They're not trying to win, they're trying to exhaust our resources and your resolve. Tucker's playing the long game, betting you'll give up before he runs out of legal maneuvers. The Steele brothers themselves face mounting internal pressure. Members losing jobs struggle to support their families. Some wives and partners, fearful of repercussions affecting their children, begin distancing themselves from club activities. At an emotional club meeting, tensions flare when newer members question continuing the fight against such overwhelming opposition. "My kids can't eat principles," one member argues. "Tucker's winning by bleeding us dry while we chase justice that might never come." Darius, usually the calm voice of reason, slams his hand on the table with unexpected force. This club was founded on brotherhood that transcends race, he reminds them, voice vibrating with intensity. "We've always stood against injustice, against the powerful preying on the vulnerable. If we back down now because it got hard, what the hell do any of our principles mean? What example are we setting for our kids if we teach them to surrender to bigotry when fighting becomes inconvenient?" His passionate speech reunites most members behind their cause, though 3 riders quietly turn in their club patches that evening, unwilling to risk further retaliation. That night, disaster strikes without warning. The clubhouse erupts in flames shortly after midnight fire, spreading with unnatural speed that suggests accelerants were used. Despite the fire department's prompt response, the building is largely destroyed before the blaze can be controlled. While members salvage what they can from the smoldering ruins, Darius receives a panic call from Leo. Tucker's private security team has been spotted approaching Ayana's temporary apartment across town. Racing there on motorcycles, they find the door broken down, and the apartment ransacked, furniture slashed, and walls spray-painted with racial slurs. A handwritten note pinned to a shredded pillow reads, "We took evidence that might interest federal investigators," referring to Ayana's critical medication that's now missing. With their clubhouse destroyed, and Ayana's home violated, Jasmine and her mother move into Darius's modest home for safety, creating makeshift sleeping arrangements in his spare room. As they settle in that evening, Jasmine displays surprising resilience, comforting her increasingly depressed mother with wisdom beyond her 6 years. "The bad people can take our stuff," she tells Ayana. but they can't take us away from each other as long as we keep fighting. She shows Darius a school assignment from earlier that week, where students drew their heroes. "I drew you and the Steele brothers," she explains. But Miss Blackwood tore it up and said I had to draw someone appropriate instead. Her small face hardens with determination rather than tears. "So I drew you again at recess." She can't stop me from knowing who the real heroes are. Meanwhile, Tucker capitalizes on the clubhouse fire, publicly speculating the bikers burned it themselves for insurance fraud. He announces a community healing initiative with carefully staged photo opportunities, showing him meeting with selected minority employees who praise his leadership. Local officials dependent on Tucker's influence for their positions stand beside him at press conferences, declaring support for his efforts toward reconciliation despite private misgivings some express in unguarded moments. The section ends with a pivotal moment that changes the conflict's trajectory. While Darius contemplates their dwindling options, a strange convoy of vehicles approaches his house after sunset. Not Tucker's security, as he initially fears, but dozens of community members arriving in family cars, church vans, and work trucks. Former Tucker employees, minority business owners, teachers, healthcare workers, and many others affected by Tucker's discrimination over the years have come together without announcement or invitation. Their spokesperson, elderly church deacon Walter Freeman, addresses the surprised Darius simply but powerfully. "We heard you're standing up to Tucker. We've been waiting decades for someone with the courage to do that. We're here to help. This isn't just your fight anymore." As the gathered crowd nods in agreement, Deacon Freeman adds what becomes their movement's unofficial motto. "They think they can isolate you, but they don't realize how many of us have been waiting for this moment. We're not afraid anymore." 2 months into the conflict, with legal proceedings stalled by Tucker's sophisticated legal maneuvers, the Steele brothers adapt their strategy to unprecedented circumstances. Their clubhouse destroyed, and members facing economic warfare, they operate from constantly changing locations, church basements, community centers, private garages, and back rooms of sympathetic businesses. What began as one motorcycle club's stand against injustice has evolved into a community-wide resistance movement against Tucker's oppressive influence. The coalition meets secretly throughout Oak Ridge, planning their response to Tucker's increasingly desperate attempts to regain control of the narrative. Deacon Freeman introduces Darius to a network of community elders who've documented Tucker family abuses since the company's founding in the 1950s. These meticulously preserved records reveal a generational pattern of discrimination, with the current Mason Tucker merely continuing practices established by his father and grandfather before him. "They've built wealth on our backs for 3 generations, explains 79-year-old Ida Mae Simmons, a retired domestic worker who once cleaned the Tucker family home. Old man Tucker would brag about paying colored workers half what whites got for the same work. His son refined the system, making it less obvious, but just as effective. This one, Mason, just added computers and lawyers to the family business of exploitation. Community members contribute to the resistance in various ways based on their skills and access. Local minority-owned businesses provide supplies despite Tucker's attempts to pressure their suppliers. Teachers discreetly support Jasmine and other affected children, creating safe spaces during school hours and providing additional tutoring to counteract classroom discrimination. Medical professionals ensure Ayana receives proper treatment despite insurance obstacles, with one pharmacy technician secretly replacing her stolen medication. Former Tucker employees continue providing insider information about company operations and Tucker's increasingly erratic behavior in executive meetings. Darius coordinates these diverse efforts with revolutionary organizational skills developed during his military career. The former Marine establishes secure communication protocols, carefully compartmentalizing information to protect participants and creating contingency plans for various scenarios. Ayana, regaining strength and purpose through meaningful action, emerges as an articulate spokesperson, recording powerful video testimonials shared through secure online channels to avoid local media censorship. These stories reach national civil rights organizations who begin taking interest in Oak Ridge's situation after initial skepticism about challenging someone with Tucker's resources. Tucker, sensing his carefully constructed narrative losing credibility, despite local media control, escalates intimidation tactics. He establishes a community safety initiative, essentially a private security force, targeting resistance members under the guise of crime prevention. Late-night visits to supportive businesses result in broken windows and inventory damage attributed to random vandalism, despite occurring only at establishments supporting the resistance. Anonymous calls to employers pressure them to fire coalition supporters, while banks suddenly review loans for businesses associated with resistance members. The resistance responds with increasingly sophisticated countermeasures. Leo creates encrypted communication systems allowing safe coordination. Keith trains community members in legal self-defense and documentation techniques, ensuring every intimidation attempt is recorded as evidence. Vince establishes connections with civil rights attorneys nationwide, creating a legal support network extending far beyond Tucker's regional influence. When Tucker's security force attempts to intimidate an elderly black couple who spoke publicly about historical discrimination, they find Steele brothers and community members waiting with cameras recording everything. The confrontation, captured on video and shared through social media channels beyond Tucker's control, undermines his victim narrative and demonstrates the resistance's growing organizational sophistication. Jasmine, despite her youth, becomes an unlikely symbol of resilience and hope for the movement. She creates simple, powerful drawings, depicting her experiences that spread widely online, resonating with people far beyond Oak Ridge. When her school attempts to expel her on manufactured grounds following these drawings' popularity, so many parents and community members protest that administrators quickly back down, unwilling to face the negative publicity. Emboldened by this success, Jasmine begins organizing other children affected by discrimination, creating a Kids for Justice club that meets under the supervision of sympathetic teachers after school hours. Meanwhile, Tucker's business operations show increasing strain as resistance impacts multiple levels of the company. Employees, now aware of the discrimination, thanks to information distributed by the resistance, begin subtle workplace resistance. Productivity decreases in certain departments. Mistakes occur in paperwork supporting Tucker's defense. Claims safety complaints increase, requiring costly inspections. National clients concerned about potential association with discrimination lawsuits quietly reduce orders while seeking alternative suppliers. Tucker's operational costs increase as he hires replacement workers for departments experiencing unexpected resignations among employees sympathetic to the resistance. The resistance gains a crucial ally when Philip Norwood, Tucker's former chief financial officer, who recently retired under suspicious circumstances, contacts Vince through an intermediary. Meeting secretly at a fishing cabin 50 miles outside Oak Ridge, Norwood, reveals he left after discovering Tucker diverted company pension funds to cover personal financial problems stemming from gambling debts at private high-stakes games. Norwood provides financial records showing not just discrimination, but potential financial crimes that could trigger federal banking and securities investigations independent of the civil rights complaints. Mason's always been careful with the discrimination, Norwood explains, making sure everything has plausible deniability. But he got sloppy with the finances when the pressure started. He's been moving money between accounts, falsifying records, lying to shareholders. That's where he's truly vulnerable. District Attorney Michaels secretly meets Darius at a highway rest stop, explaining the federal investigation continues despite Tucker's obstacles. While his political connections have slowed proceedings, they haven't stopped them entirely. Focus on the financial crimes, she suggests after reviewing Norwood's documents. Discrimination cases often become he said, she said, situations that clever attorneys can undermine. Money leaves a clearer trail. Al Capone wasn't convicted for violence, but for tax evasion. Sometimes the side door is more effective than the front. The section concludes dramatically when Tucker announces a major company restructuring, claiming economic necessity forces elimination of several departments and hundreds of positions. In reality, the plan specifically targets departments with the highest concentration of resistance supporters and minority employees. The night before implementation, resistance members execute a coordinated action planned for weeks, simultaneously filing hundreds of detailed discrimination and harassment complaints, with state and federal agencies overwhelming Tucker's legal team's capacity to respond. Each complaint follows identical formatting, but contains unique personal experiences, making automated responses impossible. This flood of formal complaints triggers mandatory review procedures, temporarily blocking Tucker's restructuring plans, pending investigation, and buying crucial time for the resistance. Have you ever witnessed a community come together to fight injustice, even when facing overwhelming odds? Comment number 1. If you believe organized resistance can defeat systemic discrimination. Or number 2, if you think powerful interests, like Tucker, usually prevail in the end. Like and subscribe if this story of community courage inspires you to stand against injustice in your own life. The resistance against Tucker Industries was growing stronger each day, but Mason Tucker still controlled tremendous resources and influence. As the conflict intensified, both sides faced critical decisions that would determine not just Ayana and Jasmine's fate, but the future of Oak Ridge itself. Would the community's unified stand be enough to finally bring accountability to generations of discrimination, or would Tucker's wealth and connections ultimately allow him to crush those who dared challenge his power? 6 months into the struggle, tension in Oak Ridge reaches critical levels, transforming the once quiet southern town into a community divided by increasingly visible battle lines. Tucker Industries faces multiple investigations, declining business and internal conflict as employees choose sides in the ongoing dispute. Mason Tucker himself shows signs of deteriorating control, his normally polished public persona cracking under pressure. Recent appearances at business functions and town meetings reveal an increasingly agitated man, making rambling statements and lashing out at perceived enemies, including longtime supporters who suggest compromise might be necessary. His vindictive actions become more erratic and public alienating, even those who previously defended him unconditionally. A decisive shift occurs when Jennifer Wallace, Tucker's personal assistant of 8 years, approaches the resistance after Tucker physically assaulted her during an angry outburst over a misplaced file. The 34-year-old white woman had loyally defended her boss throughout the controversy, dismissing discrimination claims as exaggerations. Her perspective changed dramatically when she became the target of his uncontrolled rage. "I always thought the complaints were from people who didn't work hard enough," she admits to Ayana during their first meeting, her arm still in a sling from Tucker shoving her against a filing cabinet. "I told myself they just didn't understand business necessities. I was wrong, so wrong." She provides his private calendar and recordings of executive meetings where Tucker explicitly directed managers to target minorities and resistance supporters for termination using coded language about appropriate company culture and team players that his leadership team clearly understood as racial designations. Most damaging, she reveals Tucker's secret plan to close the Oak Ridge factory entirely and relocate operations to Mexico, abandoning the town despite public promises of long-term commitment. This facility closure would eliminate over 2,000 jobs in a town of 12,000 residents. "He's already purchased the land and started construction," Jennifer explains, providing documentation of the Mexican factory development hidden under a subsidiary company name. The discrimination lawsuit is actually convenient timing. He'll blame the closure on hostile business conditions created by the resistance, but he's been planning this move for 18 months. This revelation transforms the town's dynamics completely. White employees previously supporting Tucker now face the same economic threat as minority colleagues. The resistance gains unexpected allies as business leaders and local officials, concerned about the catastrophic impact of factory closure, begin quietly distancing themselves from Tucker. Chamber of Commerce members meet secretly with resistance leaders to discuss economic continuity plans should Tucker follow through on the closure threat. Tucker, increasingly isolated and aware his support base is eroding, makes a desperate move to reassert control. He calls a town meeting at Oak Ridge High School auditorium, ostensibly to clear misunderstandings and address community concerns about the company's future. Instead of reconciliation, however, he presents an explicit threat to the entire community: either end all resistance activities and pressure federal agencies to drop investigations, or he'll immediately close the factory and withdraw all corporate charitable funding that supports everything from the hospital to youth sports programs. He demands the town council pass resolutions supporting him personally and condemning the criminal conspiracy against him, giving them 48 hours to comply before irreversible decisions are implemented. Oak Ridge existed before Tucker Industries, and Oak Ridge will continue long after Tucker Industries if necessary. He declares from the auditorium stage, his voice alternating between calculated menace and barely controlled fury. The choice is entirely yours. Prosperity with me, or destruction without me. The town faces an impossible decision that reveals the true extent of Tucker's decades-long economic stranglehold. The factory directly employs nearly 30% of residents, with many others dependent on related business contracts, service industries, supporting Tucker employees, or community programs funded by company donations. Immediate closure would effectively destroy Oak Ridge's economic foundation, creating widespread foreclosures, business failures, and eventual population exodus. Yet submitting means abandoning justice for hundreds of victims and accepting continued discrimination as the price of economic survival. During this crisis moment, Ayana emerges as a powerful moral voice. At an emergency community meeting the evening after Tucker's ultimatum, while others debate economic practicalities and potential compromises, she takes the microphone despite her natural shyness about public speaking. Her voice initially trembles but strengthens as she addresses hundreds of anxious residents. "Tucker's counting on our fear," she says, looking directly at families who might lose everything if the factory closes. "He believes we'll choose comfort over justice, security over dignity. For generations, that calculation has worked for the Tucker family. They've built wealth by betting we value survival more than equality." She describes her own journey from department supervisor to homeless mother, from hiding her experiences to speaking truth publicly despite consequences. What lesson are we teaching our children if we surrender that wrong is acceptable if done by powerful people, that profit matters more than people, that we should accept abuse if fighting back is difficult? Her speech, live-streamed by supporters and shared across social networks, reaches beyond Oak Ridge, drawing national attention to the town's predicament. As pressure mounts with Tucker's deadline approaching, he makes his most vicious move, yet targeting what he correctly perceives as Ayana's greatest vulnerability, Jasmine. Using contacts in child services developed through years of strategic donations, he arranges for Jasmine to be removed from Ayana's custody, citing unstable living conditions and exposure to dangerous influences through association with a motorcycle club. When officials arrive at Darius's home where they've been staying, they find not just Steele brothers standing guard, but dozens of community members forming a protective circle around the house, including teachers, ministers, and medical professionals who can testify to Jasmine's well-being. The standoff attracts immediate media attention, with cameras capturing officials retreating after community religious leaders negotiate Jasmine remaining with her mother pending formal hearing. The failed child removal attempt backfires catastrophically for Tucker's public image. National civil rights organizations that previously hesitated to challenge someone with Tucker's resources announce formal involvement in Oak Ridge's situation. Celebrity activists with millions of followers tweet support for the Oak Ridge resistance, bringing mainstream attention beyond regional news coverage. News vans from major networks arrive from Nashville, Atlanta, and even national bureaus, transforming what Tucker intended as small-town intimidation into a national civil rights story, highlighting corporate discrimination and abuse of Nashville power. As Tucker's 48-hour deadline approaches, the resistance implements their carefully prepared counter-strategy. Using evidence from Jennifer and financial documentation from Norwood, they alert federal banking and securities regulators to potential financial crimes requiring immediate investigation. Simultaneously, they release comprehensive documentation to national media outlets showing Tucker's overseas factory plans predated the controversy by over a year, proving his threat simply accelerates existing intentions rather than responding to resistance activities. The night before the deadline expires, Tucker suffers a very public breakdown that becomes the resistance's unexpected advantage. Driving intoxicated through town after leaving an executive emergency meeting, he crashes his luxury sedan into the memorial statue at the town square, honoring Oak Ridge's civil rights pioneers. When police respond to the accident, he launches into a racist tirade captured on multiple body cameras using language so offensive, several officers later describe feeling physically ill hearing it. These officers, no longer willing to protect Tucker regardless of pressure from superiors, arrest him for DUI and disorderly conduct despite his threats to have them fired. Released on bail the following morning, with the incident already leading national news broadcasts, Tucker discovers his company's board of directors has called an emergency meeting without him, citing leadership continuity concerns during his personal health challenges. After decades of unchallenged authority, Tucker finds himself potentially losing control of his own company. The section ends with Tucker returning to his sprawling mansion, finding removal vans outside, and staff packing artwork and personal belongings. His wife, Catherine, who has remained silent throughout the controversy, despite her prominent position in local society, is leaving him after 32 years of marriage. When he demands she stay, invoking their social standing and threatened financial future, she calmly reveals she's provided her own evidence to investigators, decades of witnessing his discriminatory practices and financial misconduct, that she documented in private journals initially as insurance against his frequent infidelities, but now as testimony against his abuses. "You didn't just destroy those families," she tells him as she prepares to drive away. "You destroyed ours too. I've spent 30 years making excuses for you, convincing myself business necessities explained your behavior. Watching that little girl stand up to you with more courage than I ever had made me realize what I've become by staying silent." As her car disappears down the long driveway, Tucker stands alone on the mansion steps, finally comprehending the magnitude of his impending fall. For the first time in his privileged existence, Mason Tucker faces a consequence. His money and influence cannot simply make disappear. With Tucker's public breakdown and mounting legal challenges, the resistance shifts focus from survival to ensuring accountability and community healing. Federal investigations accelerate as Tucker's political protectors distance themselves from the increasingly toxic controversy surrounding him. His company's board places him on administrative leave, pending resolution of personal matters, corporate language, masking their swift action to prevent further damage to the business. An interim leadership team is appointed with explicit directives to address discrimination claims and preserve the company's viability. District Attorney Michaels informs Darius during a secure meeting that indictments are imminent on multiple charges: financial fraud, civil rights violations, witness tampering, and conspiracy. The evidence collected by the resistance, combined with material provided by Jennifer Wallace and Catherine Tucker, creates a comprehensive case that even Tucker's extensive legal team cannot easily dismantle. However, she cautions that legal proceedings will be lengthy and challenging, with Tucker employing every delaying tactic available through the court system. His substantial resources, though diminished by recent events, still provide formidable legal defense capabilities and potential influence over some aspects of the justice system. This isn't the end, she warns. It's the beginning of a different phase. Tucker will fight these charges with everything he has left. Some evidence may be excluded on technical grounds. Witnesses might still be pressured. The system isn't perfect, and someone with Tucker's resources can exploit its imperfections effectively. Meanwhile, Tucker makes one final desperate attempt to regain control of the situation and discredit the resistance. He contacts several Steele Brothers members individually, offering substantial bribes to create internal division and obtain information that could undermine their credibility. When this approach fails, he attempts to frame Darius for drug trafficking, using his remaining police connections to plant evidence in his home before an anonymous tip brings investigators. The plot collapses when Officer James Wilson Keith's former partner reveals the conspiracy rather than participate in it, providing recorded conversations with Tucker's security chief detailing the frame-up plan. This failed attempt provides the final evidence needed for comprehensive charges against Tucker personally. Federal agents arrive at Tucker's mansion with arrest warrants for fraud evidence, tampering, conspiracy, and civil rights violations. The scene Mason Tucker being escorted to a police vehicle in handcuffs, his expression a mixture of disbelief and fury, is broadcast live across national news networks and social media platforms. For Oak Ridge's minority community, particularly those who suffered under Tucker's discriminatory practices for decades, this image represents a previously unimaginable accountability. "I never thought I'd live to see this day," Raymond Washington comments from his wheelchair as he watches the arrest on television. 3 generations of Tuckers thought they were above the law. Finally, one of them learns differently. While Tucker awaits trial released on multi-million-dollar bail with travel restrictions and electronic monitoring, the resistance transitions toward rebuilding community structures damaged by discrimination and conflict. The interim management at Tucker Industries, recognizing both the moral and business damage caused by discriminatory practices, implements immediate reforms, rehiring unjustly terminated employees, addressing safety concerns that disproportionately affected minority workers, equalizing pay scales previously skewed by race and gender, and creating clear promotion pathways for qualified minorities previously blocked from advancement. Ayana is offered her previous supervisory position with back pay and a formal company apology. After considerable thought, she declines, having found new purpose in advocacy work, with discrimination victims from multiple companies throughout the region. "Someone needs to help others fight the Tuckers still out there," she explains. "This victory means nothing if it doesn't extend beyond one company in one town. Community healing proves more challenging than legal victories." Decades of racial division cannot be immediately overcome through policy changes or leadership removal. The resistance organizes town hall meetings where people from different backgrounds share experiences across racial lines. Many white residents hearing for the first time the reality their minority neighbors face daily. Some apologize for silence or complicity. Others remain defensive or resentful about changes to long-established social hierarchies. Schools become a critical focus for addressing systemic discrimination effects. Principal Matthews resigns after evidence emerges of his systematic discrimination against minority students and retaliation against their families. His replacement, Dr. Vanessa Richardson, a black educator with expertise in multicultural education, implements programs addressing bullying and promoting cultural understanding as foundational educational priorities. Jasmine's Kids for Justice Club receives official recognition, becoming instrumental in creating student-led initiatives that address discrimination through peer education rather than adult directives. Throughout this transition period, Darius struggles with personal challenges rarely visible to those who depend on his leadership. His role brought purpose, but also exhaustion, financial strain, and postponement of his own healing from military experiences. Having lost his job during the conflict with savings depleted and his home damaged by vandalism, he considers leaving Oak Ridge for opportunities elsewhere, particularly reconnecting with military contacts, offering security consulting. His positions in other states. Jasmine's reaction to this possibility, tears, and a heartfelt plea not to leave, forces him to reconsider what victory truly means beyond legal proceedings and policy changes. A turning point comes when community leaders propose converting the destroyed Steele Brothers Clubhouse property into a civil rights museum and community center focused on economic justice. They ask Darius to direct the project, recognizing his unique ability to bridge different community segments and translate between various stakeholders without compromising principles. The proposal includes transitional living quarters for families recovering from economic hardship, with Ayana and Jasmine as the first residents helping design programs for future families facing similar challenges. As these positive developments unfold, Tucker's case progresses through the justice system. During pretrial hearings, prosecutors reveal the full extent of his crimes: systematic discrimination, affecting hundreds of families over decades, financial fraud involving millions of dollars, corruption extending throughout local government, and specific retaliatory actions against those who challenged him. Former associates seeking leniency for their own involvement provide additional evidence documenting Tucker's explicit directions regarding discriminatory practices. Tucker, facing overwhelming proof and abandoned by previous allies, considers a plea agreement that would include significant restitution to discrimination victims, though his attorneys continue fighting to minimize consequences. The section concludes with a poignant scene at Jasmine School. The annual Community Heroes project previously featured primarily white business leaders and officials, reflecting the town's traditional power structure. This year, students present diverse selections, including several Steele Brothers members, community elders who supported the resistance despite personal risk, healthcare workers who provided care regardless of insurance status, and teachers who protected vulnerable students from discrimination. Jasmine proudly presents her project on Darius, detailing how he helped her mother when no one else would and stood against injustice, despite personal cost. As Darius watches from the audience, visibly moved by her presentation, he realizes their struggle has already changed the next generation's understanding of courage, justice, and community responsibility. Heroes don't always look like what we expect. Jasmine concludes her presentation. The simple wisdom of a 7-year-old cutting through adult complexities. Sometimes they ride motorcycles. Sometimes they're your neighbors. Sometimes they're regular people who just decide that wrong things shouldn't keep happening without someone saying stop. 1 year after Tucker's arrest, Oak Ridge has begun a difficult but meaningful transformation from a town defined by division to a community actively addressing historical injustices. The courthouse square buzzes with activity as residents gather for the grand opening of the Oak Ridge Civil Rights Center, converted from the former Steele Brothers Clubhouse, with funding from corporate restitution payments, community donations, and government grants. The modern facility houses historical exhibits documenting local discrimination struggles, community meeting spaces, legal aid offices for workers facing employment issues, and transitional housing units for families rebuilding after economic hardship. Darius, now the center's director, stands at the podium addressing a diverse crowd that would have been unimaginable 18 months earlier. He speaks not of victory, but of ongoing commitment to building a community where justice isn't exceptional but expected. What happened here isn't a happy ending. He tells the assembled community members, media representatives, and visiting dignitaries, it's a beginning. Tucker's discrimination didn't develop overnight, and neither will true equality. We're not celebrating completion today, but committing to continuation. The Steele Brothers, still active as a motorcycle club with expanded membership reflecting Oak Ridge's diversity, have evolved their mission beyond their original brotherhood. They now serve as community guardians, escorting children facing bullying to school, providing security for minority-owned businesses, and organizing regular community support initiatives for vulnerable families. Their leather jackets, once viewed with suspicion by many townspeople, have become symbols of protection and solidarity that transcend racial divisions. Ayana, now employed as a regional civil rights advocate with a national organization, describes her journey from department supervisor to homeless single mother to community leader. 2 years ago, I was hiding in a broken-down car with my daughter, believing I had failed as a mother because one powerful man decided we didn't deserve dignity. She tells the crowd, her confident public speaking, a dramatic evolution from her former reserve. Today, I help others recognize that their value isn't determined by those who discriminate against them. Our worth isn't diminished by others' prejudice, it's revealed by our resilience against it. Her powerful testimony about perseverance through seemingly hopeless circumstances resonates with many still struggling with economic challenges following Tucker Industries' downsizing after the scandal. The center announces a scholarship program for minority students pursuing careers in law, business, and public service named for Jasmine in recognition of how her simple plea to sell her bicycle catalyzed community-wide change. Jasmine herself, now 7 and thriving in school under Richardson's administration, cuts the ceremonial ribbon. No longer the frightened child desperate to feed her mother, she speaks with surprising poise about her dreams for Oak Ridge's future. Before kids like me thought we couldn't be anything important because nobody who looked like us had important jobs, she explains with the straightforward clarity of childhood. Now we know we can be lawyers and doctors and business owners too. We just needed people to believe in us. Her Kids for Justice initiative has expanded to schools throughout the county, with children leading conversations about fairness and inclusion their parents often find difficult to navigate. The ceremony includes unexpected developments, reflecting broader change. Catherine Tucker Mason's estranged wife, now finalizing their divorce, announces the establishment of a substantial foundation addressing systemic racism in corporate environments, funded from her divorce settlement and dedicated to providing legal representation for discrimination victims. I was complicit through my silence, she acknowledges publicly for the first time. I can't undo that history, but I can help ensure others have resources to fight back when I didn't. Several former Tucker Industries executives attend the ceremony, publicly acknowledging their complicity in discrimination and committing to mentoring minority business leaders. Their presence signals important shifts in corporate culture, extending beyond single-company reforms. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings against Tucker have concluded after months of pretrial maneuvering. Facing overwhelming evidence from multiple sources, he accepted a plea agreement rather than risk a public trial, exposing further details of his conduct. The agreement includes significant prison time, major financial penalties distributed to discrimination victims through a structured settlement process, and cooperation in ongoing investigations of corruption throughout local government that his influence facilitated over decades. The city council, previously dominated by Tucker allies, who implemented his preferences without question, has been reconstituted after several resignations and special elections with minority representation for the first time in Oak Ridge history. New transparency requirements prevent the backroom deals that previously allowed discriminatory policies to continue unchallenged. Tucker Industries itself has undergone complete transformation following Tucker's removal. Renamed Oak Ridge Manufacturing with new ownership, after bankruptcy restructuring the company, has implemented comprehensive anti-discrimination policies, diverse leadership and community accountability measures overseen by an independent board that includes former employees affected by previous discrimination. Many previously excluded minority employees now occupy management positions based on qualifications finally recognized. The company's new CEO, Marcus Washington, Raymond's son who left Oak Ridge after college, believing no opportunities existed for ambitious black professionals in his hometown, symbolizes this change from a family devastated by industrial injury and discrimination to leading the community's economic future. Not all changes are positive or complete. Some residents, unwilling to accept new realities of accountability and equality, have left Oak Ridge, taking their resentment to other communities. Others maintained quiet opposition toward the resistance, blaming them for community division rather than acknowledging Tucker's actions as the true source of conflict. Economic challenges persist as the region transitions from dependence on a single employer to a more diverse economic base that will require years to fully develop. The resistance's legal victory, though significant, hasn't immediately solved generational poverty or eliminated prejudice that remains deeply embedded in some institutions and attitudes. The story comes full circle when Darius takes Jasmine to a bicycle shop after the ceremony, fulfilling a promise made months earlier. There, the Steele brothers surprise her with a new purple bicycle, replacing the one stolen and destroyed during their struggle against Tucker. The moment carries profound symbolism for everyone involved. What began with a desperate child trying to sell her most precious possession now concludes with the community restoring what was taken, not just the bicycle, but her dignity, security, and future possibilities. As Jasmine rides joyfully around the courthouse square, Darius reflects on their extraordinary journey, how a child's desperate plea unlocked courage throughout an entire community previously paralyzed by fear of retaliation. Later that evening, Ayana and Darius sit on the porch of her new home watching Jasmine play with neighborhood children of various races who would never have interacted before the resistance changed Oak Ridge's social dynamics. Their relationship, forged in crisis and strengthened through struggle, has evolved from rescuer and rescued to partners in both advocacy work and personal life. They discuss the future, the changes already achieved, and the considerable work still needed to address structural inequalities that persist despite Tucker's removal. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth everything. We went through, Ayana admits, watching Jasmine teach younger children how to balance on their bicycles. The price was so high for so many people. Darius considers this watching the children play together, without the racial self-segregation that characterized Oak Ridge's previous generations. "Look at them," he responds. "They're growing up in a different world than the one that almost destroyed you. That's worth everything." A news alert interrupts their conversation. Federal investigations, sparked by Tucker's case, have expanded to similar situations in other communities where corporate discrimination remained hidden behind economic influence. Corporations nationwide are proactively examining their own practices, fearing another Oak Ridge situation that could damage reputations and financial stability. Civil rights organizations report significantly increased reporting of workplace discrimination as people find courage in Oak Ridge's example. As night falls, Darius receives a call from a resistance member in a neighboring town facing similar discrimination issues from their major employer. They're requesting guidance in organizing their own response, having seen Oak Ridge's success in challenging seemingly untouchable power. Without hesitation, Darius agrees to help, understanding their struggle in Oak Ridge was never isolated, but part of a larger movement toward justice that continues beyond their individual community. The story concludes as Jasmine joins them on the porch, proudly announcing she's teaching her friends to recognize unfairness and stand against it. "Like you taught me," she tells Darius and her mother. As they embrace, the lights of motorcycles appear in the distance, Steele brothers arriving for their regular community patrol, ensuring Oak Ridge's transformation remains protected. The final image captures this new family silhouetted against the horizon, symbolic of a community forever changed by the courage to challenge injustice, beginning with a child's simple plea, "Buy my bike, sir. Mommy hasn't eaten in 2 days." Has this story of resistance against discrimination moved you? If you believe everyone deserves dignity and fair treatment, regardless of their race, hit like and subscribe. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that standing against injustice, even when difficult, creates ripples that can transform entire communities. Comment below about a time you witnessed discrimination and how you responded. Your story might inspire others to find their courage. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Oak Ridge's transformation. Remember, real change begins with individuals brave enough to say this isn't right, and continues with communities courageous enough to stand together. This story reminds us that systemic discrimination thrives in silence but crumbles when communities unite against injustice. Jasmine's simple act, attempting to sell her bicycle out of desperation, ignited a movement that exposed decades of racial inequality perpetuated by those in power. True change requires courage from unexpected places, a child's honesty, a biker club's protection, a community's solidarity. The Steele brothers teach us that allyship isn't passive sympathy, but active involvement even when facing personal risk. Ayana's journey demonstrates how victims of discrimination can transform into powerful advocates when given proper support and opportunity. The story also reveals how racism operates institutionally through hiring practices, loan approvals, housing access, and educational opportunities, creating a comprehensive system of oppression that appears unbreakable until challenged. Collectively, perhaps most importantly, we learn that justice isn't a single victory, but an ongoing commitment. Dismantling decades of discrimination requires sustained effort across generations. Tucker's downfall shows that even the most entrenched power structures can be overcome when enough people refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. The ultimate lesson is powerful, yet simple. Our individual choices to stand against discrimination, however small they seem, can create ripples that transform entire communities. Have you ever witnessed discrimination in your community but felt powerless to address it? Jasmine and the Steele brothers show us that courage is contagious. One person standing up often inspires others to find their own voice. Share in the comments a time when you witnessed injustice and how you responded, or how you wish you had responded. Your story might give someone else the courage they need today. Has anyone ever stood up for you when you faced unfair treatment? How did that change your perspective? If this story of resistance against discrimination resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to support more content that highlights the importance of community action against injustice. Share this video with someone struggling against discrimination who needs to hear that they're not alone in their fight. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Oak Ridge's transformation. Remember, change begins with individuals brave enough to say this isn't right, and continues with communities courageous enough to stand together.